Last summer, a Camaro driving in Dubuque, Iowa, was involved in an accident going 150 miles per hour. Tragically, the accident claimed the lives of 3 teens. That car was on display to represent the dangers of driving recklessly.
We really want to emphasize the importance of driving safely and driving the speed limit. Our traffic deaths are considerably higher this year, and a lot of those are related to speed and obviously people who are not wearing their seatbelts.
The Iowa State Patrol also had a seatbelt convincer at the fair. It lets the public experience the importance of seatbelts for themselves.
A lot of people are surprised of how much of a jolt you get even at a low speed, because like I said, that is a 10 to 15 mile per hour crash, and so they don't realize of how fast they're actually going and what could happen even in a low speed, like say a parking lot speed, of the damage that can be done when they're not wearing their seatbelts.
I'm ready.
Down. Here we go on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Ooh, that didn't feel too good.
No, and you can tell that if you, even at a low speed like that, what would have happened if you didn't have your seatbelt on? Yeah, you'd have been going face first right into the shield or in the dash of a car.
The Iowa State Patrol hopes exhibits like these have opened fairgoers' eyes. In Spencer, Iowa, Irvin Doman, KTIV News 4.
The Iowa State Patrol is also looking to expand their presence at the fair. They say engagement at events like the fair is a great way to get their message to the community.